Chairman General now. This is this is the African president of ITUC. The African. Martha is highly confident. Okay. Of course, people here. Assistant Secretary of ITUC.
Welcome, Your Excellency.
Let me take this opportunity to thank the government of His Excellency, the President, William Samoei Ruto, whom we are with here, to have waived any payment on visas. All of you, none of you paid any penny on a visa. And if there is any, here he is, you will be refunded your money. And let me tell you, it is his policy, and he has preached it everywhere on the continent, wherever he goes, that he wants Africa of free visas, so that he can be able to promote free movement of persons on this continent, free trade amongst ourselves, to promote intertrade and ease flow of communication on our continent. That is part of what he has been preaching. We thank you for these bold steps, Mr. President, and continue preaching this. As a labor leaders, we can attest here today that you remain fearless leader who never shy away from receiving criticisms. Let me tell my colleagues to know that. Considering that I personally, as Francis Atwoli, Secretary General of COTU, for so many years, I have been one of your great critics, who before your election, I criticized you on every proposal you made to the electorate. But as a true Democrat in our democratic society, after your election, you said, you guy, come around, let's sit down, and we agreed to work together and promote workers and Kenyans' interests at large. That is a true reflection of a true democratic leader. When my colleagues all over the world, they were worried that, oh, maybe this will have to be what happens maybe elsewhere, you changed the narrative, it became positive, and you moved closer to us more than any other organization. And we thank you for that. And I think that is a very good example for the young generation and those who aspire to be leaders for the purposes of creating a united nation, a nation that cares about other leaders and respects the views of them or whatever time from those who are opposed to them. You have also continued, not only that you didn't stop there, you have also continued to engage workers always. You have given us audience to which we remain grateful as we equally continue championing for the aspirations of working men and women in our country. Most of people say, why is no court talking about the cost of living? Why court is not talking about issues related to taxation and so on? Why court is quiet when people are doing this? But I can assure you, and here the president is, I have time and again engaged the president. He has given us his side of his story, and we have given him our side of story. And we have given ourselves time bound that we expect things to change. From 40 years or 35 years now, up to where I am, if you close that door there, and you ask your police officers to carry out inspection in our pockets and in our handbags and extend it to our rooms or our cars, You will be required to have cartons and cartons to fill the tablets of the medicines, capsules, and what type of medicines that these people work with. We live on tablets, we live on medicines, and we need to have a working health insurance authority. And that is why I support that. I will be there. If anything goes wrong, Your Excellency, I will raise an alarm because that is the area of our concern. Africa is awake, and as workers, we must always unite, for we have nothing to lose but our chains. In the pursuit of a brighter future for our workers, we must acknowledge the pressing need to build skills across the African continent because our workforce deserves the opportunity to thrive in an era of rapid change. You can do so if you are working closely with governments. I want to thank governments, not only our government here. When we were in our meeting in Geneva, that is the governing body where I represent workers in this region. Sorry, Sister Jacqueline, it's a little bit painful. But government supported us to make sure that we win a vote to refer the right to strike to the International Court of Justice. Where there is an arbitration, where people are not understanding, let other people arbitrate us. And if you are not working with governments together, moving with governments together, they would have left us alone. And that is why there are things under social tripartism that both employers, workers, and governments must move towards one line. And the three are anchored at the International Labour Organization like this. That is why, after our elections and our party lost to his party, to the party of the president, I told my colleagues, I go back to where I belong. Because where I belong is in social tripartism, social dialogue, and an area of collective bargaining. Now, as the world is gearing up towards the COP28 that will be taking place in Dubai, I call upon all of us not to forget the clarion call for just transition that ensures that as we move towards a sustainable future, the rights and well-being of workers are safeguarded. But I have also told my colleagues that just transition does not only mean our areas of comfort being safeguarded by this clarion call. It also means that we are transiting from the current situation of agitation to next level. We cannot continue, remain in the agitation which has been our background for years. We must move to a next level from agitation to articulation so that we can attract both our employers and government to sit down and see what is good for workers and what do we need to have. Furthermore, we must remain true to our commitment of ending gender abuses in our workplaces through foster environments where all workers, regardless of gender, can contribute their talents without fear of discrimination or harassment.
You remember we had a conversation and you guys told me about old age poverty. And you gave me very stark and serious statistics. You told me how Kenya is not doing well. About, I think we are number 90 something. Uko karibu na mwisho. Yeah? And I promise you that we are going to work together. And I must also commend Francis Atwoli. That even though we were on different sides of the political divide, but when there was time to put the country ahead of personal interest, he did that. Because we were in court, and I must commend also Jacqueline, we were in court, all of us, arguing about should we continue paying 200 shillings as our contribution to our social, our NSSF. And it wasn't make sense. It wasn't making sense. So finally, we've all agreed that we need a percentage of our salary. The good news, my good brother Atwoli and the COTU movement and my good sister Jacqueline, is that today we have increased by about 450% our contribution to Social Security. In fact, we are going to double the money that we are saving at NSSF in the next 4.5 years. We will have doubled the money we have collected for 60 years. We are going to double it in just 4.5 years. That is how transformative things become when leaders work together. And that is why I believe in tripartism. It works best when employers, when workers, and when governments work together. Today, we are governed under a constitution which not only identifies human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, and equality among our national values and principles of governance, it also recognizes labor relations and social security as human rights and fundamental freedoms. By setting out the respective rights and obligations of workers, employers, and by implication, government, under Article 21 of our Constitution, the right to fair labor practices implicitly reflects the tripartism which forms the foundation of labor relations. The Labor Relations Act, which brings out this principle in greater detail to guide daily interactions in the workplace, is a case in point. It is clear then that social dialogue and tripartism are fundamental for sound industrial relations reflected in robust collective bargaining agreements and similar instruments, and critical to the realization of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda in terms of social justice, job creation, and the rapid attainment of shared prosperity among us Kenyans. I was having a conversation with the Director General, and he was explaining to me how he found a conversation in Berlin about Kenya's engagement with the German government on bilateral labor agreement that will facilitate more Kenyans to work in Germany as we work on our bilateral labor agreements, so that we can make the labor or migrant workers not a problem, but a solution. So again, we are working in that space to increase the number of people, whether they are working locally, whether they are working in foreign, and whether they are working in remote locations. The whole concept is to create more workers, so that because Kenya is a country of workers. So that commitment I have made, and as I told you, I have kept that commitment. We now have 120,000, and my plan is that by 2027, you will have 500,000 people working. That is the plan. I know the court have said we should go and readjust the law to make it aligned appropriately. That we are going to do, so that the 120,000 people can become 200,000 and can become 500,000 in the next 5 years. Because if we don't engage these people in productive work, they will become a very big challenge to all of us. The young people out there, unless we create real opportunities. And you know, we used to talk about we're going to grow the economy and the economy is going to create jobs. It's now beyond that. We have to be deliberate. We have to be intentional about where we are going to create those jobs.
The ILO therefore commits to ensuring that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement becomes the driving force for socio-economic transformation and increased opportunity for decent work. Looking at your Congress draft resolutions, I am encouraged to see several points of convergence with ILO priorities. First, the need to address the plight of African migrant women and men. Too often, they fall victim to human trafficking or die in their quest for better working and living conditions. The ILO supports your call to promote voluntary and right-based governance of migration alongside campaign to end discrimination, racism, and xenophobia. We will thus be stepping up our work to promote fair labor migration that benefits migrant workers as well as countries of origin as well as countries of destination. Dear colleagues, the achievement of social justice calls for the urgent realization of freedom of association and collective bargaining. The recently held ILO governing body approved a strategy for the promotion and implementation of the right to collective bargaining. And this, together with a greater focus on freedom of association, will allow the ILO to step up its effort for the effective realization of these two enabling rights. At a time when so many workers are grappling with rising cost of living and declining purchasing power, the tripartite meeting on living wages to be held in 2024 should be instrumental in shaping consensus and enhancing ILO leadership, advocacy, and support to constituents in this critical area. The extension of social protection is another common priority in the fight against poverty and the fight against inequalities.
The basis for a fair and equal society is under threat, and that basis is called democracy. Recent reports confirm that democracy is on decline. We see everywhere in the world, also on this continent, a rise of extremism and some politicians that want to divide societies by putting people up against each other. Democracy is where we as trade unions stand for. Respect for human rights, equality, freedom of real free elections, right for minorities, and much more. All core values for us. Today, these values are under attack. We see a rise of autocracies, and in several countries, no real free elections anymore, no respect for the voice of people. Unfortunately, this decline in democracy goes hand in hand with the decline of workers' rights and trade union rights. We are the largest social movement in the world. We are also the largest defenders of democracy. Being the largest movement defending democracy, we are unfortunately also the first targets of those that want to destroy democracy. We are their biggest opponents. They target us and workers first. And we must fight for democracy, because fighting for democracy is fighting for workers' rights and trade union rights. That's also why we, as ITUC, will launch a campaign for democracy. And our General Council that will meet in December, we will propose to decide on that there. On the eve of COP28 in Dubai, the greening of jobs and economy is more than sensitive in the context of the continent's commitment to its intensive industrialization and the modernization of the agricultural sector. Recurring questions are also African sovereign debt, untransparent financial flows on this continent and elsewhere in the world, and others that create asymmetries in economic structures. They also should be addressed. And to have success, dear comrades and dear delegates, we will need increasingly strong representative unions capable of to commit to collective bargaining and playing their role in social dialogue. We are also part of the ITUC's Africa's commitment to continue this work, to fight against the proliferation of unions on this continent while respecting the right of workers to affiliate with the organization of their choice without any interference. We must strengthen our representativeness. We must strengthen our financial viability. We must organize every worker, also young people, also people that have no job, women, disabled people, migrants, without any distinction of race, ethnicity, religious and ideological beliefs, sexual orientations, and others. If we do that, we will be stronger. Any approach to create trade union unity on the continent will always be supported, because it will allow all unions and all workers to be more effective, to have more influence in our relations to the African Union, the African Development Bank, and other multinational institutions. It will make us stronger to the UN 2030 agenda and its SDGs. It will make us stronger in our work in the ILO, the organization that has a very important place in our work and in our hearts,